Grace and peace to all the saints of God out there. Rudy Lister here again, bringing the next video. I really apologize for the delay that it took me to get around to making another video. But here I am now, making another video. I want to talk real briefly about the topic of love. And I'm going to read through a portion of 1 Corinthians 13 and kind of discuss the topic of love real briefly. This will probably be a pretty quick video. So here we go. 1 Corinthians 13, starting at verse 4, I'm going to go to the beginning of verse 8. It says, "Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself. It is not puffed up, does not behave rudely, does not seek its own, is not provoked, thinks no evil, does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails." Now, two things that I really want to bring up is when people make misstatements or wrong expressions about the justice of God. Many people out there will tend to try to pigeonhole Christians into their claim that God's justice is immoral or wicked or what have you. And I would just want to encourage my brothers to realize that God's law is the most righteous law of all over any civilization. A proper execution of his law, which of course we're all fallible beings, but nonetheless, a proper execution of standing in the statutes and commandments of God would be an exalted nation that stood above all civilizations throughout the history of humanity. So, one of the things that I really want people to think about when I say that type of thing, because I know a lot of people will still disagree, but here's what I would like you to really think about on that part of it. There is no act of love that is unjust, and there is no act of justice that is unloving. And with that being said, I know a lot of times people tend to want to proclaim that there is bad news and there is good news coming from God, meaning that we will tend to label the law of God, the justice of God, as the bad news, and then when we get to the part of the gospel where we're proclaiming Christ to people, we will call that the good news. But I would really like to point out and challenge my brothers to realize that a righteous and just judgment over a criminal is a good thing. And we need to remember that when we go about expressing and talking to or reaching and seeking to reach the lost, and how we go about expressing that. We need to make sure that we are actually proclaiming, as the Bible puts it. You see in Romans chapter 2, somewhere around verse 6, I believe it is, or 16, that Paul speaks about the judgment of God coming, and he says that is a part of his gospel. So it's really important for us to really realize that when we are even proclaiming the judgment of God, the justice of God, that is a part of the gospel. It is not contrary to the gospel. It is not bad news and good news. That is good news. That God is going to have his way with all the wicked and unrighteous. That he is going to cast judgment over them. That is good news. And we need to make sure that we are properly presenting that to people, so that we are not finding ourselves in a position to where we are clinging to their presuppositions, which claims that God's judgment is unrighteous or immoral somehow. So I would, if that doesn't quite grab you, I would just ask that you would please pray about that, kind of think on it, meditate on that, and just I'm sure that God will open up your understanding about that, about what it is for us to take that position of proclaiming his news, about his judgment, his justice, his righteousness, as bad news. So I would encourage my brothers to stay away from that, making sure that we are proclaiming the full gospel message, which entails who God is, his judgment against mankind because of who man is and where he is before his creator, and also what God has actually done to reach down into humanity, and by sending forth his son, that he would willingly give his own righteous life on behalf of those who are wicked, rebellious, and wretched sinners. So with that, I would just point out that there is no justice that is unloving, and there is no love that is unjust. Pointing out to verse 6 here in 1 Corinthians 13, it says that love does not rejoice in iniquity, but it rejoices in the truth. And with that, I want us to realize that when we try to use tolerance as an excuse for why we are unwilling to stand up for what is right in the presence of those who are committing iniquity, that it's really important that we realize that that's not love. When we tend to do that, and then we try to classify that as, oh, I'm being loving towards that person. No, you're not. The Bible tells us that love does not rejoice in iniquity. It rejoices in the truth, which means, think about it this way. A parent who loves their child is a parent who corrects their child. The parent who lets their child be in their way, go their own way, is the parent that is being neglectful. They are not being loving to that child. And with that, I hope that everyone can see the contrast or the parallel to the fact that those that are willing to stand up and tell you the truth and bring correction to you when you are going wayward, those are the individuals that actually love you. They are doing a loving act toward you. Now, of course, I realize that in that, there is a lot of people who can go about with the wrong motive in trying to bring correction to people. But however, just know that it is actually to our own demise if we are or not appropriately discerning between a person's motive in why they are going about bringing correction to us. So that's really important for us to be able to discern through. And like I said, when we are going about teaching our children, teaching those who we do have relationship with, we want to make sure that we're properly representing the God of the Bible, which is to say that he is a God who brings correction to those who are his. He is a God who brings correction to those that he loves. And that is in itself an act of love. And it is also an act of justice. I know a lot of people may kind of have complication with understanding that, but realize this, that I'm speaking from the context of those who are now in Christ. They have been justified by what Christ has done on the cross. So it's really important for us to realize that every act that God does in bringing about love and correction, that he is executing justice. He is executing a just act, I should say. So that's really important for us to understand and realize that justice and love are very tightly knit. You do not have an unjust act that is loving, nor do you have a loving act that is unjust. So, or I should say, there is no just act that is unloving. No unloving act that is just. So I know the reason why I'm presenting that is because oftentimes it gets presented in that light of people want to bring condemnation or a judgment of immoral or wickedness or immorality towards those who are willing to stand up for what is right. That's happening very vastly across our nation right now. So I just wanted to bring that out. And also, I wanted to bring forth the topic of us Christians falling back into this place of thinking that it's okay for us to express, all I can do for a person is pray for them. One of the verses that comes to my mind when I hear that type of an expression comes from James chapter 2, verse 15 and 16. He says, "If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to him, 'Depart in peace, be warmed and filled,' but do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit?" Now, those are words obviously of rebuke towards the people that James was writing to. And he's basically telling them that it is not okay for us to express what we would think are comforting words without putting legs to them. And likewise, I think oftentimes we can find ourselves in a place where we try to fall back on prayer as in that is our scapegoat, so to speak, for not going forth and actually putting legs to what we are praying for. And what I mean by that is, obviously, when a person is seemingly getting himself into a position where you are thinking along these lines, and I'm saying this because I know it's been taught a lot, so our culture has kind of been ingrained with this. But when a person gets to a position to where you are feeling like all I can do is pray for them, I would encourage you and challenge you to realize there's more that you can do for that person on top of praying for them. I'm not by no means trying to discredit or discourage praying for people or praying about things, but what I am wanting to challenge my brothers and sisters on is to actually put legs to those prayers, in the sense of, to give you an example, if a person, or this happened to me before, a person began to tell me all I can do is pray for them. That's a false statement. It's not true. What I also can do for them, as well as pray for them, is I can try to reason with them. I can call them to accountability. I can point out to them right from wrong. I can do those types of things that are actually putting legs to my reaching out towards that individual. And like I said, I'm not trying to discourage praying. However, I'm trying to emphasize for my brothers and sisters that we are called to be doers of the word, not just hearers. And basically, in what I am expressing is going away from having this divide of thinking there is nothing but non-contact type of help that we can give to people, which comes by way of prayer, and thinking that that's all we're reduced to. But the fact of the matter is, we can actually go forth into the world and do things. And that's really important for us to realize, that we actually do put legs to our prayers, that we go forth and we actually do reach out to people. And I'm sure that anybody who's been around the faith for the past few years can see how much more open-air preaching has been growing in our nation. We got a lot more open-air preachers out on the street. And that, in a sense, is what I'm talking about, is these people are actually putting legs to their prayers, meaning they're praying for the lost, but they're not just praying for the lost, but they're actually going forth and reaching out to the lost. They're making that that physical side of it to go along with the spiritual, which is they go out to the public and they proclaim the truth of the gospel message out to the public with the hope that by God's grace that some would be saved there. So I hope that was being real clear with you, and I hope I was being clear in my expression, the way that I was expressing that. Hopefully it would be insightful and helpful to some of you out there. If you can, leave me a message, subscribe to my channel. Hopefully I'll be able to be a bit more consistent in being able to bring forth some more videos, and stay tuned. It will get a bit more deeper. We'll be getting into some deeper topics and stuff like that. Not that love is not deep. I just barely briefly scratched the... I don't even know if you can call that scratching the surface, but I just gave a very brief touching on the topic of love. But I would say, in regards to what we see commonly practiced in Christendom here in America, those are some pretty deep issues that need to be addressed. That we are not a people that is just called to prayer, but we are also a people that is called to go forth. And I really hope that that was clear for some of you. Praise be to God. May God's grace and peace be with you. And I will see you next time. God bless, brothers and sisters.